I think the one thing that stands out for me, again, like I'm the son of a Contra County sanitary worker, and so like I hang my hat on how hard I work and just work ethic and out hustling people. And that's what I hope our team, as the head coach and obviously when I was a coordinator on our side of the ball, it just exemplifies that. It's just hard work,
Welcome to Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. Each episode pulls back the curtain on the coaching profession, spotlighting voices from every level of the game and offering lessons and insights for your own path. But first, a word from CoachComm.
When the game's on the line, your play call can mean the difference between winning and losing. Don't let poor communication cost you the game. For 35 years, CoachComm has been the trusted leader in coaching communication, delivering solutions with unmatched sound quality, performance, and durability. That's why thousands of coaches in high schools across the country trust CoachComm. You put in the hours to prepare. Make sure your communication delivers when it counts. CoachComm, giving coaches the ultimate competitive edge. Visit CoachComm.com to learn more.
Follow Inside the Headset on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content. Now, let's get inside the headset.
Coach Almond, what's going on, brother?
What's going on, Mario? Man, I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you more than you know, man, because I feel like every time, I had to ask you before we even start recording, have we done this before? Because, we get the opportunity every convention as you come and, dedicate some of your time to help us just be able to function, man. And I've talked to you so much. I feel like we've done the podcast before, but this is the first time official, man. So I'm really excited about kind of diving into your story. And with that being said, man, let's go ahead and do it. The first thing we always ask our coaches whenever they get on the podcast is, when was that defining moment that you knew you wanted to be a part of this profession?
I think, like, legitimately, I was fortunate. I don't think it was ever a question I wanted to coach, from when I was just a little guy. My dad coached me in youth sports and had some really good youth coaches that were, my friends, my buddies' dads, and just around a lot of good youth coaches. And like I wanted to be them, because they meant so much to me. And so I knew real early on, and then now that I didn't know whether I wanted to be a baseball coach, a football coach, or what. When I get into high school, it was really kind of like I was set on being a head high school football coach and trying to be like Bob Laddister, a guy that was in my hometown. I didn't go to De La Salle High School, but I wanted to be like him or be like Brian Hamilton, my high school coach, and Jerry Coakley and stuff like that. And so I thought I just wanted to be high school, and then one thing led to another, and got the opportunity to coach in college. But I knew really early on that I wanted to
coach. When you kind of had that epiphany that you want to be a high school coach, I bet if we could freeze time and show them your resume up to this point, that guy would be super surprised, kind of all the stuff that you've kind of done, starting off wanting to be just a high school coach, and now you've just been all across the country and all multiple levels and just had a heck of a career. We're going to dive into that, of course. But you had an interesting start. You mentioned you didn't know about baseball or football, but you just kind of, you knew you wanted to coach. You show up to Sac State is where you did your undergrad at, showed up to play some baseball. Obviously that got, cut short to some degree, and you did not wait. You dove right into it, and then you began your coaching career, I guess, as a sophomore in college?
Yeah, I was actually my freshman year. So you said got cut short. It literally got cut short. I went up there, got recruited a little bit in football, like junior college, had an opportunity to walk on, like a preferred walk on, got recruited a little bit. So being young self, it was like D1 baseball, man, let's go. And went up there and obviously nothing was guaranteed. Just did fall ball and then literally got cut. I think like January, the start of spring semester, I was already enrolled there, kind of set, but I knew I wanted to coach regardless of how playing career, ended and stuff like that. And so literally the day that I got cut, the morning I got cut, I got on my bike and I have a car and I just rode to the nearest high school I could find. It was Christian Brothers High School in Oak Park, and rode up and met with the AD, Jill Bennett, and she said, "Hey, I'll get you in contact with our head coach, which was Vance Mueller, an old NFL player, and was trying to turn around the program." And anyway, one thing led to another, and by spring practice, I was there with a whistle coaching varsity football as a 19-year-old kid. So it was pretty good.
No, that's awesome, and When I think back on all the podcasts I've done over time, a lot of the ones that stick out are those ones where, guys got in a car and they drove across the country to, do an interview on a whim, or got on their bike and just said, hey, the first high school I see, I'm stopping in here and getting a job. And so that intrigues me a little bit because you hear that kind of advice when you're a young coach and, an older coach says, hey, man, call guys up, go walk up to them and shake their hands. The young guy, you hear it, but sometimes it's hard to do. What motivated you to say, hey, you know what, today I just got cut and now I know what the next chapter is. Let me go figure this thing out.
Yeah, like I said, I was fortunate to be around a lot of good coaches in youth sports and high school, and that impacted my life. And so I knew early on, like I was going to do this.
Yeah,
I was like on Tim Harbaugh, plan. I've heard him talk about it before. Like he wanted to play as long as he could, he wanted to coach as long as he could. And we felt like you just couldn't do it. He's going to coach 2 more years and quit, So unfortunately, my playing career was cut short, pretty short, a lot shorter than his, but kind of the same model. I knew what the next step was, and if my playing career ended there, and it was just on to the next chapter.
Yeah,
that was coaching. Very fortunate that it all worked out that way.
No doubt about it. Now you get the job, right? Now the realities of it is you are a 19-year-old guy that, you're 1 year separated. I don't know the California rules specifically, but there's probably a 19-year-old senior that's on that roster in some capacity. You're looking at a bunch of guys that are not. You're more closer to them than you are than probably the youngest coach on that staff in regards to age and maturity and all that kind of stuff. Well, let me not say maturity. Clearly, you've shown the maturity there, but how did you just separate yourself from being a 19-year-old to being a coach?
I think, I don't know if maturity is the right word for me looking back at my 19-year-old self, but
yeah.
I think there was an intensity that was probably a little uncommon for kids that age. For myself, even like when I played, my brother was like that too, and a lot of times that was difficult. The team dynamic and trying to fit in and stuff like that. When maybe you're a little intense than other people, and so. But I think that intensity kind of helped me navigate that. Was the level of maturity. I think too. I just knew taking that job that I was no longer a high school kid. I was a coach, and again looking at how people affected me, and being a role model and teaching, character skills, leadership skills, all those types of things. And so kind of knew and understood my role. That wasn't to be buddy with the players, but just more to, kind of be there to help and serve them.
Yeah. Now over those 3 to 4 years that you kind of were around that program, although you do come back here later in the story, over those years you were linebackers coach, running backs coach, worked with the special teams. I can even remember when I got done playing college and I thought I knew everything there was to know about ball, and you get into those rooms and you start game planning and watching film. You realize you don't know much of anything as in those first couple of years, right? And so, I can even imagine now you're being 19 years old, you're having these type of responsibilities. How did the newness of the profession and that side of the game of football, affect you, and how did you have to, kind of get on it quick, make sure that you knew what you were talking about when you got in front of those young people?
I think I thought I knew a lot more than I actually did.
Yeah.
As we all go through that, I'm probably still like that, learning and growing. But I just wanted to be in that seat. I knew kind of early on, like, all right, just shut up and listen.
Yeah.
And observe. Not that there's good thoughts. I kind of wrote them down, and there was something that I was going to suggest or whatever. I was going to go through it in my mind,
right,
for a month before I said something, just because I knew how new I was to it. But at the other side of that too, is any opportunity that I could get experience, whether it was washing clothes, whether it was ordering, reconditioning the helmet, helping the head coach with paperwork, anything that I could do. Looking back on it, just as naive as I was, I knew I wanted to be a head coach. So I wanted to learn all those problems, and so. But I think in the long run, that helped me out. Helped me gain respect from the coaching staff, gave me some really good insight on what it is to be a head coach and some of the jobs nobody else wants to do. But that's kind of kind of the growth there for that first year or two coaching.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And so you graduated from Sac State there in 2009, where most people right now are, they want to coach. They're trying to get trying to figure out how to write a cover letter. And you've already got 3 years of experience. And so you actually take the opportunity to go be the defense coordinator at Sierra College in 2009. So, how did you reach out to them and get the ball rolling? They often say that first job that you get's hard. Obviously, you hopped on the bike and got that first job, but now you're kind of getting out your comfort zone a little bit, hopping into the college realm. You're no longer an undergrad student. What was that process like?
Yeah, I was actually a running back coach at Sierra College.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't yet, but
my bad.
No, you're good. I've been a lot of different hats. But Jeff Tisdale was the head coach at Sierra College at the time. He was a Christian Brothers alum. So Christian Brothers High School in Sacramento, a long, deep history, kind of like where I'm at now at Carson-Newman.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of coaches that had come through there. And Jeff Tisdale was one of them. He was the head coach at Nevada, for a long time in the 90s, late 90s. Anyways, he would come to practices and just by chance, he saw me working, position, worked the position group. And one thing led to another. He had an open job and he just took a chance on me and said, "Hey, I got an open job. It's a stipend position. It'll pay you a lot more than you're making at the high school, obviously.
Yeah.
Like I know you're graduating and I want you to come." And he was the offensive coordinator, the head coach. And so I ended up accepting that and, kind of the same deal now. I was living in Sacramento. This is a good, bike story. But from Sacramento to Rockland, California, probably about 20 miles or so. And so my car had been stolen in Sacramento, believe it or not. And so I was out with the car again. I was riding my bike, but the first month on that job, I had a bike to work. And there's this hill, Sierra College Boulevard. There's this massive hill. That was probably a tiny hill, but at the time on a bike, man, it seemed massive. So kind of another story, a bike story. But took that job and rode my bike there for the first month and get over that hill, and it would go all downhill from there, into Sierra College until my wife came pick me up after she got done with work and whatnot. But just another great opportunity there with Jeff Tisdale, and learned a lot in high school. With Jeff Tisdale, it was he is the last of the best of us. Woody Hayes, he's that style of coach. The Woody Hayes, the Bo Schembechler, just old school, Bear Bryant, he was that type of guy. Very organized, very meticulous, very demanding. And so to be around with him for 2 years, he was demanding on players. He was even more demanding on coaches. And so, I got chewed out quite a bit and learned a lot there at Sierra College. And, it was a really good experience for me. Kind of set me up for getting into the college side of things.
Absolutely. Now, I kind of felt to ask this, but when you were doing the high school thing, I'm assuming, in the daytime, you're doing your undergrad classes, and then you're making your way over there to Christian Brothers to go do the football stuff. And, I'm sure, all high schools have to be extremely creative because you do have to teach in some states, or, you have other jobs, and then y'all kind of convene together. This is your first opportunity to, you're doing this stuff all day long. There's no undergrad classes, and what was that transition like to where all of a sudden it's a little bit more of that real grind of football all day?
Oh, it was awesome. You go from, I was doing my undergrad, so in the summers, the way that I would pay for, we're not scholarship or anything. So my dad was a Contra Costa County sanitary worker, and so he worked cleaning out sewer lines and stuff like that. Really good job. Was a blue collar guy. Worked that for about 30 years of his life before he retired. Anyways, he hooked me up with a company called Duke's Roof Control. And so I did that they would send me all over the country and we would go treat sewer lines. So nasty job. It's, kind of disgusting. But it was really good money. Yeah. And so I did that the months of June and July to pay for college and to be able to do, all that stuff. When I got to Sierra College, I no longer had to do that because it was all ball. So that's I was just ecstatic. I didn't have to do that no more, to make ends meet and stuff like that. Yeah. But, you just talk about going from, the teaching. I am a teacher, but, my subject is football.
Right.
And so not having to teach history class or not having to do some of those things. I was at home just being all football all day long. So
now you talked about, and this is the reality of the profession, right? Especially if you're in it long enough. You just talked about being a young coach and, the type of guy your head coach was, that old school mentality. And, you got chewed out a little bit. How did you, some people run away from that. Some people as a young coach, I mean, even myself at times I would get frustrated when, I got chewed out, and, it took some time to kind of realize it's a good thing. It's what I needed. How did you react to that, just being a young guy?
Yeah, like, to be honest with you, I think I, bit my lip a couple times. Yeah. Probably said something under my breath. Not anywhere near Coach Tisdale, but it's hard at the time. But you look back at it, and like somebody believed in you enough to let you know you were doing something wrong. And so looking back on it now, it was a lot easier said than done at the time. I didn't enjoy it, but there's just a high standard of how we did things at Sierra College, and the proof was in the pudding. They won games. I think. Before I had gotten there, they had like a 32-game win streak that was tops in the country at the time, or something for junior college football, and so extremely high standard for everybody in the program. That's what I learned, from it. Looking back on it, at the time it's no fun, but at the end of the day, that's where growth happens a lot of times. Is somebody challenging, substandard behavior, and so I'm very fortunate that I was around Coach Tisdale and he was like that.
No doubt. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting is this time at Sierra College. This marks your last time being on offense. Not unless I got another position wrong. I think for the majority of the time since then. I mean, or I guess for all the time since then, you've been in the defense side of the ball. Now you're a head coach. But what? Any reasoning? Did you have a preference, or just the career kind of shake out like that?
The career kind of shook out like that. Like, I've always kind of considered myself a defensive guy. I played linebacker. And always coached linebackers, even though I had, running backs, but it was really I was a linebacker coach. And so, again, another benefit of that is you're going there, and I didn't care. It was just my first college job that I had been offered. So I was whatever they wanted me to coach the snappers and punters, I would do that, But looking back on it, too, at the same time, like, being a defensive guy and having to coach offense, like how beneficial is that? Yeah. To understand now protections, rules of protection, rules of run game, how things are coached on the other side of the ball. And it really has helped me throughout my career, really having an understanding and the knowledge of, of some of the things that go on the other side of the ball, on the other side of the coin. So that was huge in my development there too.
No doubt. Now, in 2011, you had the opportunity to return to Sac State. And this one's a little interesting. You often see coaches have the opportunity to return either immediately after their playing career or even a couple years after their playing career. I'm kind of putting emphasis on the playing part because you didn't play football there. So you're going to get that GA job is you obviously have the affiliation from being a grad, but you don't have affiliation from being a player there, or they could see your work ethic and things like that. So how did you kind of put your foot in the door there and earn that graduate assistant position?
I think what I've learned, I didn't really know this at the time or think about it too much, but it's all about relationships. I think everybody knows that, and a lot of people say it. But I've been very fortunate to have a lot of like people luck, just people in my life that however I've met them, and they've, helped me out tremendously. And so, long story short, Clayton Adams is a guy, he's offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys now. But Clayton was a family friend of my aunt and uncle and cousins up in Sacramento. And so I met Clayton at a barbecue. He actually married into family friends of mine. And so he was the offensive line coach at the time at Sacramento State. And so I met him. He knew I was coaching at Sierra College. He said, and he knew kind of I was eager to continue to move up and learn and grow and stuff like that. And so they had a defensive GA job that was open. And he said, hey, I can get you an interview. I can't really help you from there, but I can get you an interview. And so ended up sending my name and contact info to Anthony Parker, our defensive coordinator, who ended up calling me up. And I'm gonna get long-winded here, but this is a great football story too. Kind of unique deal. It's really the only interview that legitimate interview up until probably the head coach interview that I've been on. I don't know if I called it a legit interview, but Anthony Parker called me and said, "Hey, I heard you want the GA job." He said, "It's between you and one other guy." And he vetted me a little bit, this and that, but he said, "Meet me at the facility, the Sac State facility at 9 a.m. I said, "Okay, coach, I'm there." I was young. I hadn't really been through a true interview process, 4-year level. So I said, "Coach, do I need to be prepared with PowerPoint, anything?" He's like, "Nope." He said, "Just wear shoes and shorts." I said, "Shoes and shorts?" He said, "Yeah, just workout gear. Just wear that." And I wasn't going to ask you more questions than that. I said, "Okay." I hung up the phone. I told my wife, I said, "I don't know what's going on, but like this, I've been told to wear coat and tie to all interviews. That's how I was raised too." Yeah. So anyways, I go to the facility at the 9 a.m., whatever, and I'm in full coat and tie. Like this is a trick, So I parked there and I'm like 30 minutes early. I'm trying to get the way of the land, see what's going on. Are they practicing? And so I see him roll up and he's got, his workout gear and he's got like a towel over his shoulder. He goes in the facility. And so I'm like, okay, this is crap. This is real. So I go around my car and literally change into shorts and, workout gear and roll up there. And so he takes me, my interview with him was, we go up to the mountains in the Sierra Mountain in California there. It's about a 2-hour drive. So we're just talking, ball the whole time up there. We get out and we're like going on a run/hike. Like we're running up in the mountains. He was a military guy and stuff too, but I wasn't prepared for it. And I guess good thing I was in a little bit better shape back then. But so I think I outran the other guy or whatever, and it led to getting a job. But it was kind of a unique interview process there with Sac State. But got the job. And, yeah, very fortunate.
So when I do the podcast, and honestly, I had, whenever you were talking about an interview here, I was planning on, hey, how did it go? What was unique about it? Because I've heard so many unique stories. And this is why I always ask that question right here. Because, you just never know what a guy is gauging off, is gauging off when you do an interview and what's important to that person. And, clearly there was something there that made you beat the other guy. And were you ever able to unpack that with him? Like, hey, this is what stood out to me or anything like that?
I think this, and I think Anthony Parker's one of the best defensive football minds I've ever been around. But I think with him, he didn't care what football I knew. He didn't care, how, what I looked like, he wanted somebody that was going to work hard.
Yeah.
And not, have high expectations, be entitled or anything like that. And so I think the process with him was he wanted to see somebody that wasn't going to bat an eye of doing things differently or doing what you're told to do or asked to do. And so at the end of that too, I kind of cut this out, but he didn't offer me the job initially. He said, "All right, you did a great job." And I think he was, the interview process was a 2-hour drive up and back. Was really where he got to ask me some questions in an informal setting and then kind of wanted to see me grind a little bit. But he ended up offering me a volunteer. He said, "All right, I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but we want you to volunteer." And so for 2 months, probably a month and a half, I volunteered. I didn't get paid at all at Sac State with the understanding that it could lead to a GA job. I think he offered the same proposition to the other guy, and I don't think that guy took it.
Right.
And so I think it was pretty, as the mind tricks and all that stuff, I think there was good spot into it, but it was literally like I was willing to do, to volunteer, to do whatever I had to do. I think is kind of what separated me there to get that opportunity.
Yeah, that's an awesome story, number one. That's definitely sitting around drinking some beers, sharing stories. That's definitely going to be one of the top stories there. But at the same time, that's a cool way to gauge it from their vantage point. Who's serious about this? Who wants this? Who's willing to risk for this, opportunity? Now, you mentioned at some point in time in that deal, you said your wife. I don't know if y'all were actually married then. Maybe you were, maybe you weren't. Were y'all married at that point in time?
We got married my first year at GA.
Okay.
So
So at this time, you're actually not married.
We're not.
Previous. So.
Yeah.
Obviously to be able to go and volunteer for 2 months, there's a financial sacrifice. There's these things. So like, how was that dialogue like with, future wife saying, "I'm going to do this. I'm going to leave Sierra College to go do this"?
Yeah, I think, again, really fortunate just to understand, and really not understand what my purpose was, what I think God was calling me to do was to be a coach, be a teacher, be a coach. And so I knew I was going down that path and before we even met. And so when we met, kind of at that point, I knew what it entailed. I knew I was kind of set on the college game for the most part and trying to make it in that realm.
Yeah.
And so I just hearing the stories, doing my research on it and stuff, I knew it was, although I wanted to make $1 million and do all this early on and be a Power 4 head coach and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I knew there's going to be a path that was going to be very difficult financially and all that stuff. And so just try to prepare her for that. Hey, I know our relationship's getting serious, but this is something that is really important to me. And I think I'm called to do. And this is what it's going to take, I believe. These are the sacrifices other people are making. Sometimes your income's great. Sometimes it's nothing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get fired for things that are really out of your control.
Right.
And so being able to prepare her for that, I think has helped a little bit. We've been married going on 14 years this year, but I think that preparation, like anything else, has helped.
Now we're going to continue to go through the story, but you have to bring the missus to the Valentine's Day convention, because obviously it's going to be on the 14th of February this upcoming year, because I would love to hear her side of this whole deal. So, you like you said, you prepare, and I'm kind of chuckling about this because I had to do the same thing with my wife. When I met her, she didn't understand the profession. She didn't quite know, what it looked like. And then a couple months later, we're moving, 3 hours north. And then 2 years later, we're moving to Mississippi, and then Louisiana, and North Carolina, a little time in Oklahoma. And obviously when they're in it, they're in it and they love it and all that kind of stuff. But, I just wonder, did she quite know what she had in store coming from old Coach Almond side, taking her all around the country. So that's always cool, man, especially when you can kind of integrate the wife into, because they are a part of these decisions. And obviously in your career, you've made a ton of these type of decisions. But back to the story. So you volunteer for 2 months. You just talk to us about that moment where they walk in and just kind of say, hey, we want to bump you up, elevate you, pay you, whatever that conversation looked like.
Yeah, it was real quick. The other guy, again, there wasn't nobody there. So I kind of, at that point too, I just kind of took the bull by the horn, so to speak. And I was going to be the GA, whether they gave me that title or not, I was going to be the best GA that I could be. And so I just started filling that role. And really, I think hopefully I made it difficult for them to say no, what does the GA do? Okay, give me that. I want to do that. And I want to do it the best I can and do more and all that. And so, figured out real quick too, to be the first one there, be the last one to leave, that type of thing. At that time, I didn't have kids. So it was really easy for me, but I wanted to make sure that if there was another coach in there, I wanted him to see me and be able to, if he needed help or anything like that, I was going to be there.
Right.
And so again, just trying to be, selfless and to serve, people. I think it goes a long way. And so I think that led to them. And then at that time, Marshall Spurbeck was our head coach, and we had the all-star staff. I mean, you thought Andy Avalos was the guy GA for. He's a linebackers coach. He was a Boise State head coach. Bush Hamden was on that staff. He last year was a Kentucky offensive coordinator. Talked about Clayton Adams. Connor Riley was our offensive line coach. He's NFL offensive line coach. Been in Kansas State forever. Daniel DePrado's at Minnesota now. He was on that staff. I mean, and they were all about the same. They were all about 5 years older than me. So for me, it was talk about, people to surround yourself with, and just, phenomenal experience there.
Yeah, that, it's really crazy when you look back on it. Often have these times on the podcast where guys reflect these staffs, and in that moment, do you notice, when you look back on that moment, did you really realize that you're in a room with a bunch of guys that's going to go on and have some really good careers? Or nobody ever really knows the answer to that, but man, it's just crazy when you list that out, how awesome a lot of those guys, and a couple of them been 35 on 35, obviously. DePrado's a great friend of mine as well. So, awesome staff there. Now, you get the opportunity to be the graduate assistant now, if I'm not mistaken. At some point in time, you get elevated to linebackers coach, kind of in a full-time role.
Yeah, another great story. So when that happened, Andy Avalos resigned to go take a job at Boise State. He'll be Boise State's defensive end coach, I believe it was. So this happened in December, January, right after recruiting. And so, I went to Anthony Parker, our defensive coordinator, and Marshall Spurbeck, and I said, hey, now I want the job type thing. And I was not ready for it at all. I've 1 year as a GA, you know. Luckily for me, again, they saw something in me that they wanted to, take a chance on. But it ended up, I was the interim linebacker coach for the spring. And so they said they weren't going to make any decision yet. They're going to make me the interim for the spring, see how it went out, and then if they need to hire somebody, they need to hire somebody. And so I don't know if they had other people there, that were not taking the job or what. But again, I went through that spring like, all right, I'm going to be the linebacker coach. I'm going to do the best I can. I was going to do everything I can to obviously you're interviewing every day's an interview. But now it's really like, the job is yours as long as you don't screw it up. And so went through that spring, and then at the end of spring ball, didn't hear anything. I think it was a week after the spring game that Coach Spurbeck brought me in his office and said, hey, we're going to offer you the job. And I went home and talk about, finances as a GA. At that time I was married. At that point I was married. And so we just got married, and I think my wife was like, what is this? Like, you're not making any money at all, barely enough money to eat and stuff. And so going home and being able to tell her that I was a full-time coach and I had a salary and benefits now was like that feeling like is probably, besides my children being born and stuff like that, but to tell my wife, like, all right, I can provide now, look at me. It's just incredible. So ended up getting promoted and then was there for, 4 or 5 years after that as a linebacker coach.
Man, I tell you what, dead serious. I mean, you can't see it through the screen, but I got goosebumps coming just because those moments in the profession. I'm sure January 1st, as we'll get into here shortly, and getting offered some of these awesome opportunities that you've gotten over the years. It's just such an awesome feeling to be able to get a better job, make a little bit more money, provide a little bit better, have a bigger impact within your program. All those things in a profession that's just so volatile, and oftentimes some of these jobs we're getting fired. A lot of negative that can be in this profession, but at the same time, those W's, man, they're special. And so, after a few years there as a linebackers coach, you ultimately end up back as the head coach, assistant athletic director at Christian Brothers. So, what led to the departure, or I don't know if the staff was let go, or I don't know what circled the leaving, but then also how'd you end up getting that job?
Yeah, I think I was there 5 years as a linebacker coach at Sac State, and there's ups and downs. A lot of the staff. So there was a change. Marshall Spurbeck resigned to retire, and then Jody Sears took over on an interim basis. We had a great year, and then there were some years that we just didn't do too well.
Yeah. And
so I think the ups and downs. I was now whatever I was 28, 29, and we had some success producing some linebackers that were really good there. Darnell Sankey still playing for the CFL, was All-American. Todd Davis was a Super Bowl captain for the Denver Broncos, and Zach Nash we had on our team too. They ended up playing linebacker for the Arizona Cardinals, but I think it just came to a time where there's like some shelf life, and maybe I was probably immature and stuff too, and just kind of didn't really know. We were struggling, kind of like, what can I do better? I hadn't. It was just, for me personally, it was just kind of like, what do I need to do? And kind of just a weird space, I guess. And Christian Brothers had reached out to me. They had an opening. As the head coach, Dan Carmazzi, who's a legendary coach, had retired. And so they reached out to me. It was like just something was like, go be a head coach. You always thought about this, and then maybe this is just full circle. Maybe this is where God intended you to be.
Yeah.
My wife had loved Christian Brothers the time that we spent there. And so, anyways, I ended up taking that job and got a head coaching experience and got to coach some really good kids.
Yeah. And so just in a nutshell, because obviously we still got about 7 or 8 stops to make before we ultimately get to where you are now. Just in a nutshell, what those couple of years been a head coach there, kind of where it all started. What would you name that chapter, or what was the takeaway from that opportunity?
Oh man, like In Over Your Head would be a good good chapter title. Because I'd never been a coordinator. All of a sudden, I'm a head coach.
Yeah,
I had a great staff. Was able to hire a great staff. Evan Boyle and Tom Price, the guys that I leaned on a lot. But Coach Spencer Webb, Coach some Gunnar Folk, had some real good talent that first year. We went, I forget, we won 10 games or so late in the playoff run there in the state of California. And then the second year, all those guys graduated, and I wasn't that good of a coach anymore. We had a young team. So I think we went 5-6 or 5-5 or whatever that second year. So, thought I knew it all, figured out I didn't. You're pulling a lot of hats at the high school level, wherever you're at. It's really well resourced, but you're lining the field, you're doing laundry, you're ordering the equipment, all that stuff, And so it was a really good experience there, but learned a lot and had to grow up a lot too, just figuring out that everything I didn't know that I thought I knew,
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is about the time I think I met you for the first time. You ended up at Dixie State in 2019. Yep. So were you looking to get back in the collegiate thing? Was that just the next opportunity that popped up? How did you end up back coaching at the college level and this time as a defense coordinator?
A little bit of both. I thought, if anything, like Troy Taylor was a guy that is a Folsom high school guy. And so at that time, he had left Folsom, gone to Eastern Washington, and then ended up at Utah, and then ended up later on coming back at Sacramento State. But I looked at him and was like, all right, maybe if I win a bunch of games and really get this program right, there might be opportunities later on. This is 10, 15 years, getting this program really right. And so, but it ended up happening that second year. My buddy who was with at Sacramento State, Paul Peterson, was our offensive coordinator. He had gotten a job at Dixie State, which is now Utah Tech. And it just called me out of the wind and said, hey, I want you to come be my defensive coordinator. And so again, that relationship piece, that people luck, we had a really good relationship the 2 years that we were on staff at Sacramento State. And he got that opportunity, and I was one of his first calls. Yeah. And so that's what led to that.
Absolutely. Once again, you kind of mentioned just not really having to do a bunch of interviews over your time frame, just because it's so relationship based. And I do want to tell this story. I think at this point in time, you start applying for 35 under 35, and you might be the first guy. Now, I've had a lot more guys here over recent years, but you were kind of like the first guy where my phone would ring and it'd be somebody saying, hey, you got to get Tyler Almond into this deal. This guy is the best of the best. I'm like, I don't know who that was, but this is like the fourth person that's called me about this Tyler Almond dude, man. And so like it was just really awesome to kind of see the amount of people just across the board. Obviously DePrado was one of those people that kind of called on your behalf, but it was just a lot of guys that stood up on the table for you, man. And as I went on to look into you, man, and just all the tremendous things that you have done, to that point in time, just as such a young coach, it was very impressive. So anyways, with that, all that being said, you ended up being a part of the 2020 35 under 35 class. Just talk to us a little bit about what it meant to be a part of that class and, what you took away from it.
Yeah, just a phenomenal experience, awesome experience. That experience, that one day I was there, the day and a half that you're part of that program, really changed the outcome or the future of my career. And so I'll tell you this story. Of course, we have a lot of talkers and speakers that come and pour into us as at 35, and I'm sitting next to Zach Arnett, who's going up to Syracuse from DC, David Braun's to my right, now the head coach at Northwest. So I'm just like little, FCS now coordinator, D2 transition to FCS coordinator. But James Franklin came and talked to us, and what Coach Franklin said was like, hey, look, go as long as you can in your career, go make decisions not based on money, but based on what would grow you, what would make you a better coach, what would give you great examples. So to cut straight to the chase, like, a month later, I go to this deal, and we had a good year defensively at Dixie State. And so Daniel DePrado actually calls me. He's like, hey, I don't think you'd be interested in this, but I just want to call you. I got this analyst job, a special teams analyst job at South Florida. It doesn't pay barely anything. He's like, I just want to see if you'd be interested. Because he knows, like I talked to him about, I've never been FBS, get out of my comfort zone type thing and stuff too. And so he floated that, and James Franklin in my ear, like now's the time. I'm 34 years old or whatever I am. It's like, if I'm going to do this and go make zero money but get the experience, now's the time to do it. I got 2 young kids, but we can do it. And so I told my wife that, and again, coaches' wives are, saints. But my wife said, all right, let's do it. And she ended up taking a second job selling gut health products and became really successful with that. But she took a second job so we could go do that. And we moved from Utah to Florida based on the 35 under 35 experience I had. And having a coach like Coach Franklin come and speak to us. Yeah. And it was just like, this is what I need to do. So that one day, that program has absolutely changed my career, and couldn't be more, thankful for what you guys do, Mario, there at the AFCA and with that program.
Well, I tell you what, man, that means a lot because, anytime, obviously my main role here at the AFCA has not been a podcast host, but it's been the director of education, and you put all this stuff together and you just hope one sentence, one line, if it's just one sentence that makes a difference, and I've said that quote before, obviously not knowing this story, but that's what I'm talking about. If that one line made the difference of the trajectory of your career, man, that means the world to me. And so I appreciate Coach Franklin for kind of sharing that knowledge. And that's actually a line that does stick out to me. And I've repeated it on his behalf before because it is such a powerful line that you said at the beginning of this deal, you walk into the profession and you want to be a head coach as fast as you can. You want to be a coordinator as fast as you can. You want to make as much money as fast as you can. And then to hear somebody in that seat say, get the experience, sacrifice the money for as long as you can. And you just really realize how powerful it is and how much it really is good advice. And so you go over to South Florida, and I'm going to kind of lump these together to kind of keep the story moving pretty good. 21 years South Florida as a quality control special teams. 2022 you're at Georgia Tech, defensive quality control specialist. 2023 you're at East Carolina as a defensive analyst. Now I think as we're seeing and as I have more conversations like this, that analyst role, quality control role, they just look so different depending on where you are, in regards to what you're doing. I think it's even changed even more now that more coaches can actually coach on the field now. Just what was kind of your takeaways from each of the different ones? And I know they all helped you be in a position to kind of get where you are to today. But, what were your takeaways from those spots with those roles?
Yes, it's like South Florida, I was purely a special teams. I was no longer defense. Didn't do much defense. Didn't do any defense at all. The only defense I got to do was like Charlie Weiss was our OC. And so he would come and like kind of ask me some questions about what they were doing, or he just kind of get a defensive perspective when I wasn't working. But other than that, it was just pure special teams. But looking back on that, like for me as a head coach, and now I'm coaching all three phases, the fundamentals of it all. And so that helped me tremendously, just understanding the special teams game, which is critical. And spending the year with Daniel probably was one of the best in the country at doing that. And then fast forward that to Georgia Tech. Now I'm back on the defensive side of the ball. Andrew Thacker, Jason Seymour are two coaches there. Just again, like I thought I knew defense. I didn't know anything compared to those guys. And so again, kind of imposter syndrome. You're like, I really don't know, what I don't know.
Right.
And but just being able to sit in the back and just learn. And I learned more defense in that. I was only there for 4 months, but we learned more defense there than probably anywhere else I've been, for the most part. And then ended up getting let go. Jeff Collins was our head coach. He got let go. He took over, and then he kind of gutted most of the staff and kind of was bringing his own staff, which obviously everybody understands is part of the business. And so the lowest of my career was probably, there were about 4 months there I didn't have a paycheck. I was fired from Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Jeff Collins called me over to his house like month 3 or whatever. And he was, of course, kind of figuring out what his next chapter was going to be. But he literally sat down, and our daughters are the same age, our oldest and his. And so he went through his phone book and just literally called everybody in his phone book. Like you talk about giving back to somebody, like that meant so much to me. Yeah. That probably kept my career and dream alive. And so he ended up calling Blake Harrell, who he knew. And Blake Harrell was a defense coordinator at East Carolina. And really kind of, again, another people, like I was just very fortunate that he did that. And I got to meet Blake Harrell, who's been a big mentor of mine. Mike Houston hired me at East Carolina. We had, good year defensively there. The year I was there and learned a ton. And those guys is back to like small college guys that had come up and it just, gritty. And it was a breath of fresh air to be on that staff with those guys. And that was a really important year of my life.
Yeah, man. You know what? Earlier you were talking a little bit about that feeling that gave me goosebumps of, coming home to the wifey and saying, hey, I got a full-time gig. We're making some money. We got some insurance. We're feeling good. And then, you just talk about obviously in real time, this was, around 7, 8 years later, but actually longer than that. But yeah, you have this gap, and then you're probably feeling as low, like you said, as you probably ever felt in a profession after that stint of just not having a job. I've been there. It's, you kind of put the fake smile on at times around other people, but man, it's not a great feeling to be extended, not getting a paycheck and not doing the ball stuff. Just talk a little bit about it. Obviously you made it out of that situation, and a lot of coaches are going to have to do it or, find a different profession. So just talk about your experience during those couple months.
Yeah, I think it's like anything else. It's not fun at the time. You're embarrassed.
Right.
You don't want to call. You're calling, and you feel like you're bugging people. And there's probably that aspect too. Like, it's a lot easier to get a job when you got a job.
Yeah.
You currently have a job. And so, but it's just like, hey, I read Van Malone's had an article, I think the AFCA put out, that said like, hey, I'm fired. Just call it what it is.
Right.
I didn't get not retained. I got fired.
Yeah.
And so that is what it is now. Like, what's the next step forward? And so it was, just reach out to everybody, whether I was bugging them or not. There's obviously the financial piece. We went through a lot of our savings. And then I was close to, really close to an interview at Home Depot, stocking shelves, whatever I had to do to keep it alive. But it had a lot of people in my corner too. David Braun was he just got a DC job at Northwestern. That was a possibility there. The 35/35 connections helped me. And then really just staying gritty and just understanding too, like anything in football, like the lows are there to like weed people out. I think there's a doctor that had pancreatic cancer, wrote a book. It's losing my mind right now, but he said like the walls the walls of adversity in life are not there to keep you out, but to test you and see how far and how willing you are to get to where you want to get to. The walls are there to keep other people out, that don't want it. And so you just look at those experiences and with that mindset, and it's just like, all right, this is going to make me stronger, man. It's going to make me a better football coach, more thankful for what I had. And I went to ECU making the same money I made at South Florida, and I was the happiest I could be just to have a paycheck from football, be able to put a little bit of food on the table and stuff like that. But it was a good time.
Man, I would love for you to share that book you're referring to, because if that's not something that
the last lecture, it's called The Last Lecture.
Last lecture, okay, yeah. If that's not talking about the coaching profession, I don't know what is. You talk about, you kind of summed it all up, and you're on a bike riding up a hill to get to work every morning. Just all the obstacles that kind of come with it, where there's a lot of times in the profession where I have actually said it before out loud, like, what am I doing? But you keep going or you don't. And, obviously that hits home. And you mentioned Van Malone. I tell you what's funny is that our article actually stemmed from me and him having a conversation where he was at SMU, and I think they all went to Arkansas, but he didn't come with them. I think that was the time frame. And I was supposed to talk with him, and he had just found out he wasn't been retained at SMU. And it was me. I was sugarcoating. Hey, coach, I know you're in transition. No, call it what it is, man. I got my ass fired. And he said that quote, and then we ended up kind of running with it. And that was a defining moment for me as a person in the education part of like, man, you got to wear that, man, because you said it. When we got let go, I was so embarrassed. I was contemplating on not going to the convention because I just didn't. Like, what do I put on my badge? All the little things that kind of came with that whole deal. And man, that's powerful. I appreciate you sharing that moment. I know it's not fun in the moment, but you're not sitting in that chair today if you don't go through some of those obstacles. And and if you hadn't had it yet, for the listeners, it's going to come one day. Now, one other thing I kind of want to hit on. Obviously, we got a few more things to talk about here, but I think what's really impressive is, you mentioned the Prado calling you over to South Florida. At that point in time, you had worked with the Prado those couple of years over at Sac State. I know y'all built a relationship, but how much does that mean for a guy to just give you a shout? You get the guy at Dixie State, calls you up, has a defense coordinator role for you. I think kind of what I've missed on asking you is, how did you do such a good job? And if you can answer in such a way, it can be more of advice, I guess. How did you do such a good job just having those impactful relationships with people where 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, they feel like they can call you because you are the guy for whatever opening they have on their staff?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, like in the profession and down in the locker room, up in the coaching staff room, it's like there's a lot of, as men, we want to kind of jockey, and I know this and I know that.
Yeah.
and which is good. I think there's a lot of good, but I think just being a good person too. I think there's, if you want to develop relationships, it's not always having the answers. Yeah. You don't have to always be that guy, and find out what makes people tick. And just like any relationship, whether it's recruiting, whether it's the guys that you coach, whether it's the guys that you work with, that you're colleagues with, or the relationships even in your own home with your wife and with your kids and stuff like that. It's purely about like, tell me your story. Tell me what makes you tick. How can I help you? How can you help me? And just having those positive relationships with Paul Peterson. We went on a run. Like we were lunchtime, like run pals. And we just go and just talk about life and stuff, And with Daniel Leprado, it was kind of the same thing, He was a runner too, but, we just find times, and it was just kind of more like, just those natural conversations that you have that are authentic, that are real, that are organic, they're not, it's not like, hey, I know this, I'm this type of ball coach. I'm a ball knower. And it's just more about like what makes you tick and what kind of person you are, your ideals and all that stuff. Yeah. I think that's helped me build relationships at every aspect.
Absolutely, man. Well, in 2024, after your time at East Carolina, you get the opportunity to be back in the coordinator's chair, linebackers coach at Carson-Newman, where you currently are now. What ultimately led to that job, and let's go ahead and put the exclamation point on it. What ultimately led to you being promoted to the full-time head coach there on the first?
Yeah. Again, I went to East Carolina. I wasn't making any money, but I was so happy that I just had a paycheck.
Yeah.
And so, but those guys knew too, like I was, 36, 7 years old at the time or whatever it was. So it was like the analyst role there, the way they had it at that time, it was more of like a transition from GA to position coach at a Division II, or FCS level or whatever. But so they all knew like I needed to get a job that paid actual money and be able to support my family. Again, Blake Harrell, just a phenomenal mentor of mine in my career. Just very fortunate to be under him, be kind of his right hand man the time that I was there. But he made some phone calls. Roy Tesh is the D-line coach there, one of my closest friends right now in the profession, and he too at the time. They ended up having connections. Brent Thompson was on our staff. They all had connections to Ashley Ingram, who got the job. He came from Navy to be the head coach here at Carson-Newman. Yeah. And they called him and they said, hey, I got a slam dunk hire for you if you're looking for a coordinator. And so Ashley called me up and obviously, we had been in conference and I was at South Florida. He was at the Naval Academy at East Carolina. He was at the Naval Academy. And so there was that connection. And I wasn't his first choice, but ended up being his second choice and ended up getting the job because the first guy turned it down. And so came here. We had a really good year. Came here, Larry Slade was our D coordinator in year one. He's retiring. And so it's kind of understood that I would take over for him and learn from him. And in the second year, we had a great year last year. And then that kind of led to Coach Ingram took the VMI job. And I think, not but 2 hours later, I got a phone call from our AD and president. And it was kind of a done deal. So,
yeah. And so no interim tag, no interim time period, just straight up, you're the dude.
Yeah, it was literally 42 hours from the time that Coach Ingram announced his resignation to my press conference. So they understood it. They moved quick, and they were very fortunate they did because we were able to retain staff, retain players, and all that.
Yeah, and so I can imagine once again bringing up that goosebump, getting that first gig for a full-time role and talking to your wife. I can imagine this one was probably pretty dang close, if not surpassing that feeling. But then that door closes to that office, and you realize you got to get your roster together. You got to get spring ball going. You got to win some games in the fall. When you get that role and that door closes, and this is your second time doing it. Obviously, you did it at Christian Brothers, a little over a decade ago. What are those feelings, and what do you have to do in those first few days to kind of get yourself prepared for this role?
Well, that's kind of a unique deal. So I was, backing up to early December. I got an award from AFCA for the Assistant Coach of the Year. And so my phone started ringing up with opportunities that were really good, for me and my family financially, that they sent and stuff like that too. There were really two opportunities that came up that were potential possibilities. And one of them ended up not working out. The other one, did. And I thought I was going to this school and pretty much it was a done deal. And we had told our kids were crying because they wanted to stay in East Knoxville or East Tennessee. And so that night was the night that I agreed to that job, told our kids and stuff like that. And that night or the night after was when Coach Ingram had called me and said he's taking the VMI job. And so it was a whirlwind. Like I was on the way out, and then it was like God has a plan for you.
Yeah, for sure.
And guess what? Here you are. And so, but when that door closed, I had my press conference. It was a whirlwind. It was really quick, and then you're getting pulled in just a million different directions. I always knew that, but I didn't. I don't know you can ever be prepared for it.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
This person wants to talk to you. This kid needs a scholarship increase. This kid is having surgery. You know, it's not just defense now. It's offense, special teams. It's recruiting, potential recruits. It's alumni, guys that have played here that want to talk to you, that want 5-10 minutes of your time, going up and seeing a booster, a donor, having breakfast with them, all those types of things. And so there's no way to prepare for it, I don't think, but just you get pulled in a bunch of different directions. But I think we're starting to slow down here a little bit with signing day yesterday.
Yeah,
we're gonna have a couple of days off and got to collect my breath a little bit. And but it's definitely a circus. So good in a good way.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, congrats again, man. I know I've told you at least a few times already, but congrats again. And you may mention of been named AFCA Division II Assistant Coach of the Year. That is something that's voted on by your peers, people in the profession that recognize, your work there at Carson-Newman on the defensive side of the ball this past season. What does it mean when you get an award, not necessarily, one that's just picked by a bunch of people that don't know what's going on the field, but by guys in this profession that can recognize what you've contributed to the defensive side of the ball there?
Yeah, I think and this is kind of like Coach speak. It's not. So it's truly a program award.
Yeah.
At Carson-Newman, we got an excellent coaching staff that ended up actually promoting our linebacker coach Caleb Goins to defensive coordinator. But I said this in my press conference. There's 5 coaches in that room that they all could be the defensive coordinator. They all could call plays. That's a collaboration each week of putting a game plan together and all that stuff. And so very fortunate for them. Obviously, we got really good players that buy in to what we're doing and buy into the team effort. And so very fortunate for all of them to get this recognition. But I mean, it's really a program award. And then offensively, you look on the other side of the ball too. Our offense led the nation, or the top 5 about in the nation every year in rushing yards. And so that helps, the defensive efforts too as well. And then we got a great special team. So truly a program award. But to be voted on by your peers, obviously that means a lot. And just very thankful to be in the position I am to have that award.
Absolutely, Coach. Well, man, I tell you what, I've enjoyed this hour, man. And, as you know, I could definitely do this for another hour with you. And I will whenever we have our next convention. I definitely see how the first season goes for you. But I want to leave it on this one note, man. You're entering year 21 in this profession. Have had the opportunity to coach high school, junior college, FCS, FBS, now Division II, had coordinator roles, assistant, quality control, behind the scenes, athletic director positions. Man, you've had a full career for a lot of people in such a short period of time. When you kind of reflect on that journey, and hopefully you had enjoyed the opportunity to kind of sit here and do this right now, but as you kind of reflect on that journey, if there was one kind of defining principle that's kind of helped you have the success that you've had that you can impart on our listeners before we head out, what would that be?
Well, that's a good question, man. Man, there's a lot of them, but I think the one thing that stands out for me again, like I'm the son of a Contra Costa County sanitary worker, and so like I hang my hat on how hard I work and just work ethic and out hustling people, and that's what I hope our team, as a head coach and obviously when I was a coordinator on our side of the ball, it just exemplifies that. It's just hard work, blue collar work ethic, just coming to work every day and then loving each other. And, but I think just how hard you work and the effort that you put in will be the kind of defining characteristic that I hope that, our guys learn and kind of has been the backbone of my career.
Absolutely. Coach, well, once again, I appreciate you sharing. Awesome, powerful story, and I know the best is yet to come for you, man. So we'll be rooting along the way. And I don't know if I've said this, but we appreciate all your help and your commitment. I mean, you got the head job, and you don't know this, but there was panic in the office. It was like, also, you and DePrato kind of. We might as well be paying you. Hopefully, we are paying you a little bit to help out. But Prado had just took the Minnesota job, and you had just took the head coaching job. We're like, how are we going to run this college without our dudes, man? So just know your impact is obviously much further than where you are currently and the players that you're affecting. But man, you help us run, so we appreciate your help every year. Okay.
I appreciate you guys, and I encourage all the listeners, all the coaches out there, get involved. Our game needs it. The AFCA needs it. The AFCA does for our game, man. We're in a challenging time, but we need all the help that we can get.
Amen. All right, Coach, man, I'll let you get back to it, man, and best of luck, okay?
I appreciate you, Mario.
All right, thanks. Bye.
When communication counts, trust the headsets trusted by the best. From high schools to the biggest college programs, CoachComm keeps coaches connected and teams prepared to win. Learn more at CoachComm.com.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm, on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.